Well, our next speaker is Master Richard Ashworth from the Imperial Feng Shui. Master Richard Ashworth is a British Feng Shui practitioner who has chosen to stay into traditional by hand drafting Brazil of all pillars in the same manner as medieval masters. Anyone who wants to have a one-to-one Brazil consultation can actually make an appointment with him later. Now let's welcome him on stage, Master Brazil Ashworth. Sorry, Richard Ashworth, my apologies.
I'm Richard Ashworth. I'm a UK Feng Shui man, which means that my daily round is going in and out of buildings being enigmatic, which is probably much the same as many of you. I spent much of the 90s, the early 90s, trying to find out what was Feng Shui, what was folklore, and what was total nonsense, which was a hard thing to do in Britain at that time. There was very little material available. It's an interesting day for me today in the sense that the Grand Masters here have been very useful to me, very helpful, in the sense that when I was researching at that point, pretty much the only books you could find were Stephen Skinner's Living Earth book in English, and Master Derek's Chinese Astrology in his Feng Shui handbook. Also, Grandmaster Vincent's Chinese calendar was the only one that I could both buy and read at the same time. And Grandmaster Raymond made visits across to the UK, and without him, Barza, which is my particular interest, probably would have never got off the ground, particularly the book written by his pupil, I understand, He Yin Fan. So I was very fortunate in being introduced. They will get rid of that. No? That one? Yes. This is a cloud. I was very fortunate in being introduced to Master Chan Kunhua in the mid-90s. And from him, with him I was able to sort out a great deal of these questions. And he was very kind to me, gave me one-to-one time. But before he would teach me, he needed to make sure I was house-trained. So he insisted I spent a year learning with Master Derek Waters, which changed my life in a number of ways. Particularly, what it did was to introduce me to the Barza and to the Ganzi Chiazza cycle, to the cycle of 60, which struck a very deep chord for me, because it was about a real connection with real time. Now, I doubt that anybody here woke up this morning going, this feels like the 17th. Because the 17th doesn't feel like anything, does it? The 17th is part of an artificial way of dividing up time to make sure that I'm here the same day as you. Without calendars, I might be here on Thursday and you might be here on Monday, which would end with a great deal of confusion. But what you might have done this morning is to wake up and go, today's Saturday. We can perhaps feel that. That relates to the visible planets, the day of Saturn. But also it's a cycle that we're sort of tuned into. And at some point in the past we've lost touch with those natural rhythms. And the cycle of 60 is something we can recognize. Because as I say, you may not have woken up thinking this is the 17th, but you might know that it's a water horse. You might know that it's a water horse and a metal pig, which makes for a volatile kind of a day. This is a day of bright ideas, a day of steam, a day of explosions. We're all in touch with the solar cycle because we know that it's darker at night than it is during the day, and apart from the tropics, it's warmer in the summer than it is in the winter. And what I learned was that a series of Chinese geniuses over a period of thousands of years had observed this in nature. It wasn't something that had appeared from nowhere. They had seen that, whether we're talking about the day, whether we're talking about the year, that it starts with what we would call wood. So the tiger, whether we're talking about month or hour, is this stirring, cold wood, if you like. It's simply light. But it was observed. It was real. It was something that was a glimpse into the nature of the universe. So we have this thing of light first, then we have this thing of fire, which is of visibility, of prominence, of being outdoors, of accelerating, going from the movement of the wood to the acceleration of the fire. And it's clear that if we're going to get anything done in a day, we're probably at it by midday. And if we're going to be outside, possibly not in Singapore, but in China and the UK, we're more likely to be doing it in June or July or May than we are, say, in December. And then we have, in this cycle, we have metal. Metal being about counting up. Metal having a certain precision about it, a certain exactness. Metal is a very different material to work with than wood, say, which you can never make quite precise. Or ceramics. Metal you can make quite precise. This is the nature of metal, that it is very precise. And therefore it has this, perhaps, negatively unbalanced. It has this aggressive thing about it, has this warlike thing about it. The metal is negatively, when it is doubled up, when it is out of balance, it is an aggressive thing. Wood has an aggressive, expansive thing. It's a different type of nature. And then finally we have water at the end of the day or the end of the year. And it's very clear that it's darker at night than it is during the day. So water is about communication, it's also about isolation. And this was a total revelation to me. So, I studied Bahasa with Master Derek, and I continue to practice using the Bahasa as my guide, because I'm primarily more interested in people than I am in buildings. I'm interested in the people in the buildings. And because it is linked into real time in this way. Now, you will be familiar with this character. This is the fourth stem, as you know. Xia, Yu, Bing, Ding. You will find that both my Chinese writing and my Chinese pronunciation is dreadful. So please bear with me. People have laughed at my Chinese writing all over the world, but they laugh at my English writing too. Ding is originally it's a nail, and it has this meaning of cleave, close, nail. Because it is yin fire, it has the nature of split or stick. That is the nature of fire. But this word clove is a really interesting one, because in English, clove is also an aromatic vegetable in the family of garlic, onion, and chives, those sorts of things. But also, the verb to cleave means both to stick and split. So, in the marriage ceremony, we promise to cleave to our partner. And a meat cleaver is the thing that separates the sinews of a carcass. And the fact that this single word, this single idea, is consistent 10,000 miles apart, suggests a very deep commonality. It suggests that these principles are ancient and universal. And the Chinese, bless you, have had the good sense to have an unbroken civilization for a little over 2,000 years, which means that you've preserved these ideas, played with them, made them more sophisticated, developed them, and so on, while we've been invading people instead. Do you know there are 22 countries that Britain has invaded? Extraordinary fact. So, excuse me, Julie. So these ideas they come from the Tao. They come from this idea of the way. The thing that precedes the idea of the elements, the idea of the Tao, the idea of everything and nothing, the idea of things going a certain way. And the degree to which we are in line with the Tao is the degree to which our lives will be relatively smooth, and the degree to which we are rebelling against the Tao is the degree to which they won't be. Most people spend most of their time arguing with the Tao in the sense that they're frightened that the Tao is going to get it wrong again, or angry because the Tao got it wrong the last time. So, no, that's it. Yes. Now, I was very careful with this slide, because it'd be very easy to introduce the obscenity at this point. I learned in my studies that what I was looking for with Feng Shui and with Basa, and I do a lot of one-to-one Basa when all that I'm doing is using the spoken word. I do Basa also as preparatory to surveys, where Basa is diagnosis and the survey is treatment, but I do a lot of one-to-one consulting. What I was looking for was change. I was looking for this moment when things matter. There are those people who see it in visual art, not particularly my gift. And there are those people who see it, who get it from music. There is a moment when a piece of music just gets you right under the ribs. I'm particularly touched by music. There's a moment when a poem does. Robert Graves, who I'm going to refer to, who you might follow up if you're interested in the truly British roots of these sorts of ideas, define poetry as being about the loss of the beloved. And this moment of poignance is when things hold, when things are in the balance. Is it going to be all right or not? And it matters. And I was asked to do some work for TV on an empty building in Hammersmith, an empty block of office work. And they said, what we need to do is to use Feng Shui techniques to fill up this office block. And I said, if anybody cared about it, it'd be full already. So we're looking for this thing. Now, this is Amanda. Can you read that? Up to a point. As you can see, she's a wood dragon. And the wood dragon, obviously your Yeka is a superficial description, but a wood dragon has darkness. The wood dragon in a single phrase has what I call middle class angst, which is complaints about things that people don't generally complain about. Why have I only got 2 cars? That sort of complaint. It's a great generalization for a lot more than 4 pillars. In fact, I draw 5, including a life house, as you can see. And human choice and individuality, in my opinion, overrides all of this. However, there are these characteristics that are true of people with these particular astrological accidents. So she's a wood dragon. You can see this complicated relationship with her father. She's a beautiful day step, relatively strong one, but poor timing. But there's like a sort of naggy relationship with her father, distant father she couldn't quite make sense of. Not an unusual pattern for that particular dragon. Equally difficult relationship with her mother, where you can see that she lives in her mother's shadow, because she's into her mother's yang. Very often you'll find someone having to live up to a parent when that's true. And there are other things to look at as well. However, what you can see from this is she's 48 now. Now, this lady is an Oxford Don, and what she wanted above all was to conceive. When I met her several years ago, her biological clock was ringing off the nightstand. And this is a very, very smart woman. And we did a series of Feng Shui procedures, Zhuangdong Dagua, placement of water, placement of stillness, organising her bed in line with the kinship, the sort of things that many of you are familiar with. Work on her husband. The other thing you get from this is an older husband as well. You've probably seen that too. And in the nicest possible way, we got her pregnant. And I wouldn't learn. Here we go. This is Neil Young. In June 2010, I'm in Hyde Park, and I'm listening to Neil Young. And he's playing a song from his Harvest album called Words Between the Lines of Age. Now, Neil Young comes from a generation of musicians, of rock musicians, who I'm a little bit younger, but my generation sort of looked up to. We thought these people with this shamanic gift would just come around, and they didn't. People like Carlos Santana and Jimi Hendrix, who could use this strange 6-string thing here to just melt us. And this particular song is about 5 minutes long, of which about 3 minutes is guitar solo. So if you're not someone for guitar solos, you may not be, it may not be something you'd be attracted to, but most of it actually is searching for a note. And you can just fiddling about until he finds this note. At a certain point, there is this discord that is just sublime. So I'm sitting on the ground, my denim shorts, t-shirt, listening to Neil Young playing Words Between the Lines of Age. When my mobile phone goes, my mobile phone is usually off. I don't want to microwave my head. And I pick it up, and it's Amanda. And at this point, she's 2-3 months pregnant. She says, there's no heartbeat. There's no baby. So they take the baby then. And she starts talking to me about progesterone and hormones and estrogen. This is a woman who knows more words in German for biology than I can understand in English. And I say to her, just 1 second. This is hell and you're not going to be out of it rapidly. But what you need to do at this point is to feel. And this extraordinarily bright and brave woman does what I tell her to do. And for the next 4 or 5 minutes, I'm just listening to her howling. And at the end of that time, she's howled out. She's cried out. And I say, now is the time for some red wine, some chocolate, some snuggles. Not that this is about to change. And she rings off. I listen to the rest of the young set. I'm with my wife Sheila. Paul McCartney comes on and sings the middle-aged day in the life at the encore, which means that Sheila can go home happy. And I'm home, and the next day, phone goes again. Strangely, my phone is on. I pick it up, it's Amanda again. She says they found the heartbeat. Now, I'm not going to begin to attribute the cause. What we're dealing with is a down. But it may be that what I'm dealing with is wholeness. See, it seems to me that bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. And it's pretty hard to explain how that happens. But what I'm seeking to do is to introduce what we might call balance and what we might call wholeness. But it seems to me that if we think of healing as being at one end performance enhancement and the other actual physical change, this is what we might call healing. And it seems to me that wholeness and abundance, by which I mean a great deal more than money, coincide. It's all down to the Tao, you might say, to do with getting in line with the Tao. Now this, hang on, what's that one? Yes? This is Selena. And actually, it's not, it's her daughter. And her little girl, Celia. As you can see, she's a metal tiger. There's an awful lot of wood here, potential and real. There is an invisible pig here, for instance. Awful lot of wood. And she lives in this house. It's one of those cardinal point houses where the facing direction is really just a judgment call. It could be facing any of 4 ways. Like if you're the Zhuangdong Dabois, it could probably only be facing one of 2 ways. And the wind was not contained, it needed enclosing. she was sleeping in Northwest 3, that's to say, Hoy High Pig. Pig and tiger, you know, make further wood. Most of the time was spent in the kitchen in the east. It was 2011 when the Wu Wang was in the east as well, and the swimming pool was there also. And of her family, she had 2 elder brothers, 2 parents. 3 of them were pigs. So an awful lot of wood. So what I knew was there was excess of wood. What her mother knew was that she was having epileptic fits in her first year of life. 7 or 8 times a month. And she was concerned that she was damaged, would never be whole, and might die. And in drafting this to illustrate how much can be done simply by observation of the Basi, her first pillar, which is a watercourse like today, and like 2002, wasn't due to come in until the beginning of this year. And her mother said to me, what do you think that means? Do you think that means she'll die? And I said, no, I don't think so at all. Because why would I say anything else? I think it means that there is change. You have water and fire there with wood. There's a good chance that we might flush through the wood with that. So no, I think it might change. I think the fitting might be over. So, we did some drawing of the work. The southeast was missing, it needed water there. The wind needed containing. There were a number of things we did. But one of the things, she was holding her breath. The baby was holding her breath. That's what made it so urgent. There was a danger of her having brain damage or dying. And I asked someone, I said, is there anyone in your family who holds their breath? She said, yes, my mother does. And I said, okay, are you in regular contact with her? She said, yeah. And I said, right, okay, next week she'll be coming over. I said, when she holds the breath, she tends to hold the breath when she's upset. So next time she holds her breath, I want you to hold your breath too. I want you to follow her. So when she starts, you start. But you finish before she does. And then so you exhale before she does. Now this is by the way, a technique that's outlined in Richard Ashworth's book, Frogs and Princes. This is an NLP idea. And she does this and continues to do it while they're having telephone conversations after her mother's come back to Australia where she comes from. And the baby starts to breathe. And again, precisely what happened, I don't begin to know. But I know that since April, she's not fitted. Can we have more affection? Somebody really cared about that. And finally, I thought, having talked about health, you probably want me to talk about money. I was surprised when I first started practicing Feng Shui. I was expected that it would all be about money. And I'm relatively at ease with that. It's a question of wholeness as far as I'm concerned. But here we have a house that you can see is on a northwest-southeast axis. Now, I've done the bases before I get there, so I'm relatively prepared. And I'm sitting at their kitchen table. This is a family of Italian extraction, which is interesting because they were living very close to a Roman road. And there was all sorts of deep history that was really interesting that we didn't have a lot of time for. And he was an investment banker who made an awful lot of money. He wasn't in any danger of starving, but he lost his job 3 times in the last decade. He was a 1959 pig, his wife a 1961 ox, and his 2 daughters were 1988 dragon and 1991 sheep. So what we have is 3 oaths. Now, 3 oaths is sometimes referred to as the bullying punishment, usually with a dog rather than a dragon, of course. But it suggests harsh upbringing, which was true of the mother, not so much true of him. But it suggests also that every time An earth branch rules the year, which happens in years of ox, sheep, dog, and dragon. They'd have what are called the four earths. And if you're familiar with this buzzing pattern, the four earths are often simply dismissed as being a plague of boils. For me, everything is choice. So when something goes wrong, it's because we're not paying attention to the Tao. We're not waking up, we're not listening to the universe talking to us. Because the universe will give us messages, and if we pay attention, we have a smoother life. If we don't pay attention, the universe slaps us around the face, and eventually it sends us propagating. And the four earths, for me, are being presented with a multiplicity of tasks that need to be handled in parallel. This year being the year of the dragon, the year of constant change, the year of sudden change, which is what I tend to refer to it as, has been full of the four earths. Because everybody at some point or another has four earth branches in their buzzy, whether because of the date or when they're living. But in an earth year, it's pretty much inevitable. So, I presented all these things to handle them. One daughter was at university and she was struggling. Another daughter was unemployed. The wife's business had failed. The husband was out of work. And as I said, sitting at the kitchen table in the northwest, facing southeast, not a great direction to be sitting in 2012. And I'm just sitting there and I can say, okay, what we're talking about is something that happened in 2006, the year of the dog. You're going to get four earths. 2009, the year of the ox, you get four earths. 2012, you're going to get space. Furthermore, you're being a pig, it's liable to be northwest, southeast. Pig, snake orientation, what you see is not what you get. The snake's issue is true. Furthermore, to do with the changeover of fate periods, it looks like something will have been violated, probably 2005. 2005 being a 4-year, the 5 was in the northwest, and I can literally point over my shoulder like that without looking from the Vazis and say something there is liquid which ought to be solid. And I turn around and I'm looking at the sun for an irrigation system. Now, an irrigation system is nature's way of telling an investment bank that they've got too much money. Because he could have watered his garden himself, or he could have paid his gardeners more to do it for him. But what he got was this damn silly thing that was in effect pushing the energy yin anti-clockwise when the natural part of the energy was yang. And there was like this sort of stasis. So we did some activations. We activated dragon virtue, heaven virtue, sun and moon simultaneously on very, very carefully selected dates and a number of other things, and we got it back to work. But my point is that everything that was visible in that map that took me out to draft, when I drafted a map, I pretty much know a house. That's sort of how I do it, and people do it lots of other ways. But Farsi gave me pretty much the information that I needed. So, I was at great pains not to overrun today. I wanted to say a number of things. First, thank you to the Chinese for maintaining, developing, adapting this information and giving it back to us. I sometimes think that I value Chinese culture more than China does. It is so important. I want to say thank you to the IFSC for inviting me here, you for being patient and listening. Two other things. I'm here for a few days after this weekend, so I'm available for some one-to-ones if anyone's interested in doing that. Furthermore, I brought over a great draft to my book, Feng Shui Diaries, which is a book of stories that's written much the way I talk, which is, poignant moments with the odd joke. I brought lots of them with me. Please don't make me take them back to the UK. Thank you very much.